So welcome. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us for this session on life after treatment and living with emotional and psychological challenges, with a view to understanding what these are and methods and strategies to help with coping and making adjustments, and also what support and care is available. A little bit of housekeeping. You won't be able to use your cameras or speak directly. If you've attended Leukemia Care webinars before, you'll know to that effect, but please do use chat. If you any questions that you've got that come out of the presentations, or you want to ask questions during the discussion, please post them in chat and we'll do our best to answer them, time permitting. And my colleague in the background is helping to field those questions to me so that I can actually talk, raise them with the panelists. And I see my colleague is now in chat, being able to talk to herself. So please use chat amongst yourselves, say hi. And so without further ado, if I introduce myself, my name's Nick. I work for Leukemia Care in patient services, sort of in advocacy liaison with the healthcare team and with different services. And it's my pleasure to be here today to help support you and help deliver this topic. So without any further ado, I think probably the best bet is if I introduce speakers as we go along. Just to let you know the process, we're going to have a presentation from Dr. Mia and Lara, and that will probably run for about 30 minutes or so. And then after that, we will have a follow-up discussion where we'll also bring Eileen into the discussion. And that's when we can have an interactive session where you can, hopefully we can answer your questions in chat. And this is only a 60-minute session, and I better shut up now, otherwise I'll use all of those minutes up. So can I introduce you to our speakers, Dr. Mia Foxhall and Lara Willis? Would you like to introduce yourselves and explain your connection to the topic and take it from there?
Lovely. Thank you so much, Nick. So as Nick already beautifully said, my name is Dr. Mia Foxhall. I'm a clinical psychologist and I work in Bristol Haematology and Oncology Centre. I work across the lifespan from age 16 up, across lots of different cancer tumour sites, including different blood cancers. And I'm joined today by my colleague, Lara, who is a trainee clinical psychologist. She's in her final year and she's on placement with us at the moment. So between us, we're going to be sharing the webinar today. And I'm just going to share my screen so that I can share my slides. Is that sharing for everybody? Lovely. Yep. Great. So yeah, today we're talking about life after treatment, and I guess just to caveat that by recognizing that for some of you, this isn't necessarily life after treatment. This is maybe a pause during treatment. Maybe you're expecting more treatment. Maybe you're not sure what's coming next. But it is important to recognize that this is about the psychological challenges that might show up when you're not necessarily in active treatment. I feel like over the time that we've been working in this area, our understanding of the challenges during diagnosis and treatment have become much more clear, but it's still lacking a little bit at that end of treatment or pause in treatment stage. Yet it's still a really difficult time. So hopefully today can help answer some of those questions that you might have and think about some different strategies of managing that. I won't spend too much time on this slide because Nick's already discussed much of this, but I guess the two really important points are to look after yourselves. So some of the stuff that we might be talking about today might feel difficult. If at any point you need to pause, that's fine. Just what's going to work for you, what you need, check out when you need to. This will be recorded so you can come back at another time as well. And we won't be sharing any patient information, but we ask if you do see anything in the chat that you keep that confidential and don't share that information outside of the webinar. The only time we would ever need to break that confidentiality is if we heard anyone talking about anything that made us worry about risk of harm coming to anyone, but we'd always try and speak to that person to let them know. So hopefully that all feels okay for everybody. And our aims today are about understanding why this period can be hard and making sense of that. It's a really understandable time for this to be difficult. And I guess that's flows into the second aim, which is about making room for those emotions and that worry. This isn't necessarily about getting rid of them because they really make sense. Instead, thinking about ways of living our life around this experience. Hopefully, we'll be sharing a couple of practical strategies that feel useful for you. And towards the end as well, we'll be thinking about signposting. So if anything that we talk about does feel like it resonates and you'd like some more information, some of the signposts that we have at the end should help you access some of that support. As Nick said, please do pop any questions in the chat as you go through, and then at the end we'll be able to answer hopefully most of those Q&As, even if we can't answer them, that hopefully being able to ask them and see other people asking similar things to you might feel helpful, just for that sense of common humanity. So life after treatment, or life while you're pausing treatment, for a lot of people, it might feel like it should be like the first picture of a celebration, a happy time, a point in time where things are exciting. This is the bit that you've worked towards. Things should be feeling good. This is when you get back to normal. And we're not saying that that's not what it's like, or that doesn't feel like that for anybody. But it can be a bit of a surprise that for some of us, it feels a little bit more like the second picture, which is that going through treatment can be a bit like whitewater rafting. And when you get to the end of that, or the pause point in that, it can feel more like you've just got through all of those rapids. You've been spending all the time figuring out how you keep yourself safe and upright, and you've just managed to rejoin that gentle stream. This is often the point for a lot of us where we finally get a chance to reflect on what has happened to me. What have I just been through? Is that going to happen again? How come it hasn't happened to all of these other people? Or I'm missing an oar, or part of my boat is broken, and how am I going to continue on this stream while I'm cold and I'm wet? And everyone else is expecting me to be okay. Because part of the problem is what other people might see is that we are now in the gentle stream, and what they miss is just how that life going through treatment has impacted your ability to enjoy this process now. It's often the first time that you have any psychological space to even consider what you've just been through, at the very same time that some of those supports around you can start slipping away. So just to name that, although of course, it's not like this for everybody, both of these experiences are really normal and really understandable, especially when you've reached the end of treatment. So I'm going to introduce a bit of an experiment here. I don't know if you're familiar with Mentimeter, but it's a really nice tool to anonymously collect groups of responses. So I'm just going to ask if you have a laptop open or a phone with you, that if you could go to the website menti.com, and when prompted, type in the code 34875210. And what this should do is bring you to a question. And that question is about the challenges that you have faced since reaching the end of treatment. And again, caveating that with, we understand some people aren't necessarily at the end of treatment yet. I'm just going to share my screen again, because what I'm hoping will come is, as people start going to the website and filling those responses in, on this page, we should start seeing some responses showing up about the main challenges that people have experienced.
Hi, Mia. Could I ask you a question?
Of course, yeah.
We can't see, I didn't write down the
It's
number.
just at the top of the screen. So it's just on this
Oh,
one, just
I
above
can
the
see it. It's
question.
right at the top there. Thank you.
Yes. So
See, I'm
again,
a total Luddite, but thanks for the
that's
direction.
okay. Just
I'm
I'll
going
read
to
it out
join
to you
you.
again, just in case anyone is listening but not looking at the screen. It's 34875210. And I'm hoping that as we start seeing some of these responses show up, oh, I can see some people are logging in now and getting some responses. Hopefully, what you'll start to see might feel familiar for you. Some of these things might start resonating. And even the ones that maybe don't feel like they fit with you, maybe we can at least start to understand how they might fit for some other people. There's quite a few things coming up here. I'm just going to leave that up for a few moments again, just to keep an eye and so we can all see what's coming up. And I think maybe a theme that we're seeing here is that there's a lot of unknown. We don't know what's next. We don't know what's normal. Is this just a pause? There's an element of acceptance coming up. There's adjustments to life. So a couple of people have mentioned about work, feeling disconnected, feeling isolated from friends, fear, feeling like it's finished too early. And I'm hoping as we start looking through these, maybe we can start seeing some of those familiarities between us. And the hope is that as we look through, and I'm going to keep this open, so although I won't share the screen the whole time, please do keep submitting, because we should be able to share this with one another afterwards. Hopefully, as you look through, what you might start seeing is that you're not on your own, that a lot of the experiences that you have, even though this is the end of treatment, are experienced by other people and well understood. I'm just going to come back to the PowerPoint for now. As I mentioned, please do keep submitting if we didn't have a chance to get to yours, because we'll be able to share. We'll come back to it at the end if we have time, perhaps, and we'll be able to share them across. But here's the crux. So although you're not on your own, perhaps you feel like you are. Perhaps as support starts slipping away from friends and family, or they're expecting you to be doing okay. Perhaps as your appointments start reducing with your local medical team, maybe even you feel like you should be doing better now. Maybe you'd pinned your hopes on this being an important part of your experience where things would go back to normal. With all of these different things, perhaps a pressure to be strong, to be coping, to not have worry in case that might affect the future for you. Perhaps it puts you in this difficult situation where this is a really understandable response, but you feel like you shouldn't be having it. And as we saw in the Mentimeter that lots of you filled in, the adjustments and changes that you might have to make after going through leukemia treatment can be mammoth. And there's a list of some of them that you might experience on the right here. Not all of these will affect everybody, but I imagine for most people, there'll be one or two in there that you will have had to adjust, that will be changing, and perhaps changing in ways you weren't prepared for, changing in ways you didn't want. You didn't ask for this to happen. And now that you've reached the end of that whitewater rafting, this is that time when some of those changes start to come into fruition a little bit. And the challenge with this is that change is hard. We only have to look at the top 5 most stressful events in people's lives to see every single one of those is a big life change, whether that's getting married, having a big health illness, divorce, moving house. Often these are related to change. And this is usually because change comes with uncertainty. As humans, we like to know what's happening. We like to know what's coming up because it gives us that ability to prepare, to feel safe, to feel like there's some consistency. But uncertainty creates that urge to prepare, but often prevents preparation if we don't know what's coming. So as we saw in the Mentimeter, there were questions: what's next? What am I to expect? What's normal? We also, as humans, have an urge to problem solve. This helps us stay safe, it helps us develop. It's a really important skill, but it only works when we have control. And there's so much about leukemias and blood cancers. There's so much about life after those treatments that can feel out of our control. So what can happen is we are stuck in this cycle of trying to problem solve, which sometimes ends up looking like worry, which can actually create more uncertainty and more worry. And finally, though we have this amazing imagination that helps us to be creative, to dream, to hope, our imaginations are primed primarily to spot danger. They work on a better safe than sorry. So not only are we trying to problem solve and try and prepare for the future, but the things that our mind focuses on is more often than not the things that could go wrong or the fears that we might have. That's not because there's anything wrong with you. That's because that's how your mind is primed to work. You've just found yourself in a situation that's incredibly difficult and sets off a lot of these chains of events. So with this in mind, I guess what we're saying is this is a really understandable period to find difficult, and it really makes sense that this can be challenging. And we wanted to provide a few different ideas about how to cope with that. Again, this is not about getting rid of these thoughts and feelings, but about finding ways of managing with them. And I'm going to hand over to my colleague Lara, who has a couple of different strategies that you might be able to take away and try. Again, if you have any questions about these, please pop them in the chat. We'll keep an eye on those for after.
Thanks, Mia. And yeah, just to say that we are just going to go through a couple of strategies, and this isn't about you know, trying to change what might already be working for you guys, but it's just adding some ways that some different ways of approaching some of these understandable thoughts and emotions that might come up for you, and just thinking about choosing what's right for you, and that might be a mix of what you're already doing, but adding in some new strategies as well. So the first one that we're going to look at today is the worry tree, and this is a strategy that can be used to think through some of the worries that come up, and link back to what Mia was saying on the last slide, about how some worries and that uncertainty that comes up for us, we can't actually control. So the first step in the worry tree is just noticing the worry. And a way to do that is you know, noticing that you are worrying and then thinking, what am I worrying about? And then this is the key bit, is thinking, can I do something about it? So is this a problem you can control? Can you influence any part of it? Is it happening now? And is it happening in reality? And if the answer to them questions is yes, then great. You can kind of draw on them problem solving skills, and think about an action plan. So think about what you can do, when you can do it, and how. And if that's now, do it, go away, do it, and then let the worry go, and change the focus of your attention onto something that's really important to you. And if you can't do it now, but you can do it later, then you can think about scheduling it, knowing that you're going to do it later, and then trying to let the worry go and change your focus of attention onto something that is really important to you. So in them situations, problem solving and what, like, initial worrying and then problem solving can be really helpful. But if the answer to that, can I do something about it, is no, then actually some of them thoughts and then worries can just keep going, and we might be just using the wrong or not so helpful tool to think about managing some of these. So on the slide it says worry might be a hammer when we really need a screwdriver. So worrying and problem solving just might not help in them situations where we can't actually do anything about it. So we'll go on to the next slide now, and that's just thinking about so yeah, you are not alone, like we said, but maybe you feel like you are, and actually it can be really, really hard. Even though these thoughts and worries are really understandable, it can be really hard to feel them, and it might be that you're starting to notice these circulate and stick around. You might also feel like you should be managing better. So there might be a chance that you're trying to cope by squashing those feelings down, or squashing those thoughts, trying not to think about them, pretending they don't exist, or maybe even judging yourself for having them. So then that self-critical thinking coming in. And I guess a problem with this is that squashing thoughts, pushing them away, trying not to feel these feelings is a really hard thing to do. So we're just going to do a little thought experiment. And I'm going to ask you to not think about pink elephant. So for the next 20 seconds, you absolutely cannot think about a pink elephant. Okay, go. I'll time it. All right, that's 20 seconds done. So how did you get on? Did you manage to not think about the pink elephant? If you did manage to not think about the pink elephant, how easy was it to not think about it? How manageable was it? How much effort did it take to achieve it? Would you be able to sustain that effort over longer periods of time? if you were really trying to squash that pink elephant. And I saw in a comment in the chat, yes, but it was really hard. So yeah, it is really hard to squash these, to not think about these. And trying to squash it, would it take your attention away from anything else that's important to you? So yeah, I'm seeing some no's in the chat to like, no, I couldn't stop thinking about a pink elephant. Some people could, but it was a lot of effort, which is completely understandable because it is really, really difficult. I'm not sure I've ever managed it. All right, so we'll go on to the next slide, which is a cartoon, and this is by Act Auntie, who have some great things, and you can find them on Instagram and Twitter. But yeah, when experiencing something very difficult like cancer, distressing thoughts and feelings are normal and completely understandable, as Mia said. And we are often taught to try and not feel certain emotions, to push them away or try and replace them with something more positive. But actually, that's really, really hard to do, as we've just seen with trying not to think about pink elephant. It is just really hard. And with feelings, we might just not want to feel them because of how they make us feel, how distressing they are, or how they make other people feel around us. So it is understandable that we try our hardest not to think about a negative thought or not to think about a difficult emotion. And we often try to fix things, to fix and treat unpleasant internal things like difficult thoughts and feelings, as if we're trying to treat difficult external things like a aggressive dog or a thunderstorm, and just like we would very normally and naturally and helpfully try to either avoid or escape these external threats, or engage with them to try and resolve the situation, we also try to do that with our internal thoughts and feelings, but it's really hard. So we imagine you have a beach ball and you're just trying to push it down underwater. And so imagine it's like your difficult thoughts and feelings. What happens when you're really trying to push a beach ball underwater? And I can see Mia's already on to the next slide. So you can see that the beach ball just comes back up. And what that does is it just might come up and cause us, it might cause us a bit more distress or kind of difficult things to manage, and we might feel either tangled up with these thoughts and feelings a bit more, or unable to pay attention to anything else. And we might start avoiding anything that might bring it up, so we can miss out on lots of things that might make life worthwhile. So I guess also just to say that emotions are there for a reason and they're telling us something really important. For example, sadness, just is an emotion telling us what's important to us, and it can be a sign of loss. So it's not necessarily the thoughts and the feelings themselves that are the big problems in our lives. It can be how we react to them, that makes things more difficult. So we don't have to like these thoughts or emotions or like them being around. They are often a very understandable reaction to a very difficult situation. And we're thinking about, as it says on the screen, you don't have to like them or want them, and you may wish they were not there, but could you be willing to allow them to be here so that you can get on with what truly matters to you? So they're there, but then you can be alongside them, but also choose to do what is important. And we're going to go on to just one technique that can help us do this, and it's called stop. And the first step is just to stop, to pause, and then take a breath, and then observe what is going on in your body. What is that telling you about how you're feeling? What are the like feelings that are coming up for you when you're doing that? What are the thoughts that are going through your mind or images that are going through your mind? So you're just really observing what's going on for you in that moment. And then you can use that information to then do the present moment. So use this and think, what is the best action for me right now? What is helpful? And it might be that that's going to spend time with your dog or a family member, or going out with a friend. It might be getting on with an activity that feels really important to you. Or it might be just taking yourself for a pause to do something that's relaxing for you. So it's really about just, yeah, that pause, that taking a breath, observing what's happening for you in that moment, and then using that information to think, what is the best thing for me to do right now? And this is where I'm going to pass over to Mia for the final few slides.
Thank you so much, Lara. So I guess the important thing to acknowledge is, and we've said this a few times, but this is about making room for how you feel, and that can be really hard. And annoyingly, making room for how you feel can often include those feelings of judgment for having those feelings. So if you are feeling scared or angry or guilty or sad, and then you're feeling scared or angry or guilty or sad for having those feelings, it just layers and layers around to make them slightly bigger and more unwieldy. And so an important part of the previous strategy is about doing that with kindness and compassion, about observing those thoughts and feelings and any judgments that shows up for them, and trying to treat them with the same compassion that you would treat another person, another friend. It can be really, really hard, but I hope that what you've gathered from some of what we've spoken about today is that what you're experiencing is an understandable response to an extraordinary set of circumstances, and that there's nothing wrong with you for feeling this way. It's the situation that is wrong. So whatever you can that can give you that sense of compassion, sometimes just thinking about how a good friend or an important person would relate to you if you told them about these feelings can help you figure out some of the ways you could relate to yourself. And lastly, we just wanted to reflect on knowing your why. So we wanted to name that a lot of treatments that you might be going through can affect what you can physically achieve, and it's hard to get away from that. There might be some things that we can pick back up, but often this is about adapting to a new normal rather than going back to the old normal. And if we spend a lot of our time focusing on what we used to do, it can feel really hard, as it can feel like quite a loss. So often we come back to knowing your why, your values. What was it about the things that you used to do that mattered to you? And that can help you reconnect with the real heart of why you did those things and find other ways of meeting those needs. So the example I often give is, for example, five-a-side football. Some people might be doing that for fitness reasons. Some people might just really love the social element or the camaraderie. Some people might just be super competitive or wanting to self-develop. And whilst others are just wanting to get outside and feel the fresh air on their face. If you can figure out, okay, what it was about doing that thing that mattered to me, it can then help us adapt to the things that we actually do. So if you can't play that five-a-side football anymore, but the reason you really liked it is because it provided some structure and it gave you some contact with your friends, then you might be thinking, well, maybe there's another way of being able to achieve that. Or if it was about being outside, getting some fresh air, exerting yourself, perhaps you might find something that feels able to meet those needs now, like a brisk walk, going to the seaside, getting out in all weathers, but adapting it to what feels available to you and accessible to you. Again, holding that previous slide in mind, that this is about trying to be kind to the adjustment process that you're going through. Adjustment requires a huge amount of mental load, and giving yourself that ease where you can be incredibly important. And you'll see at the bottom of the slide, we still recognize it's important to name these losses, even if you do find a new activity. It's not about saying you can't feel sad about not doing those things or changing the way you've done them, but about recognizing that loss and also finding ways of living around it. So for the last little bit of the talk, before we move on to the questions and answers, we just wanted to highlight some different ways of accessing support. If what we've spoken about today feels really relevant to you and you feel like it'd be helpful to speak about it a little bit more, we hope the message that you leave this with is that it is okay to ask for that support, and that there's nothing wrong with you. It's the situation that you're in. So often speaking with someone about how you're feeling can be an important starter point, whether that's someone in your medical team or just connecting to other people who understand. So using the peer support from Leukemia Care or other charities, just being able to speak with someone who can make sense of your feelings and can hold them with compassion can be incredibly powerful. Your local medical team as well will know what kind of services their area has. So some services have psychology attached to them or counselling, which you might be able to get a referral to. There's also more national charities such as Macmillan and Leukemia Care and Penny Bron, all of which I know help signpost to counselling services, and also have different peer supports available within them. And finally, on the bottom, you can see the more universal support. So if you are starting to worry about your mood or anxiety and you feel like it's tipping over to a point where it's getting in the way of your life, then maybe have a discussion with your GP about whether there's anything they can do to help, or think about signposts referring yourself to NHS talking therapies. Frustratingly, this is called a different thing in every single area, but on the next slide, there is a link to help you find out what your local NHS talking therapies service is. And this is a service designed for people with low mood or anxiety, and it's a talking therapy service that you can access for free through the NHS. And lastly, there's a couple of phone numbers there. So if you are feeling in crisis or you feel like you need to speak to someone now, you can use your NHS 111 number to connect to your local crisis team. You can phone the Samaritans, which I stress is not just for crisis moments. It can be really important just if you need someone to speak to. Or if you'd prefer to use text rather than phone, you can use services such as Shout on 85258. There are some other services as well. So like the Silver Line can be accessed if you're over, I believe it's over 50. And you might have some other more local services in your area as well. Again, your medical team, your hospital team will have access of what those might be. And lastly, we just wanted to signpost to a couple of books and websites that might feel helpful if you're not ready to talk to other people, or you feel like it suits you better to work through some stuff on your own. I can recommend these 3 books. I won't speak about them too much right now because you'll be able to access the slides later and you can come back to these. But we find that all of these can be really helpful and well considered by the people who have used them, particularly if it feels like talking or access to talking of services isn't what you need right now. So I'm just going to stop sharing and come back to the screen and check in with whether there are any questions that might be helpful.
Well, thank you, Mia and Lara. Sorry. Excuse me, my throat has dried a little bit. That was really informative, and there's some great information in there. And I'm really intrigued by the app that you just, how that's getting on as well with regards to feedback. That might actually fuel a little bit of discussion that you wanted to actually perhaps have a look at some of the issues that have been raised. That people.
Do you want me to share that screen of the Mentimeter?
It might be a good idea. For one reason, we've had fantastic questions from anybody, and it's always a danger if we get too many, we won't be able to visit them all. So we do have quite a few that we can visit, but it would just be interesting to see if there's been any further developments in the Mentimeter, and if there are any common themes there that you can identify that you might wish to address later on. Well, in the Q&A, we've got a good bit of time, we've got 20 minutes or so. So that's really good. I just want to thank everybody for playing along here and contributing. I've not seen this used before, and I think it's a fantastic way of actually bringing the audience together to show, shared experiences and differences and everything else. Wow. Okay.
There's been 42 responses, and you can see that there's quite. I'm just slowly going through them, so hopefully you can all see just how familiarities are.
Just how, as a group, just how varied the many experiences we all experience are. And I noticed a theme earlier in the chat that there are people also living on continuous therapies and the impacts on their emotions due to side effects, potentially fatigue, immunity issues, things of that nature, where there isn't a clear-cut break, and these are picked up over time. Why don't we address some of the initial questions that we've had and maybe some themes that are there? I think one of the first ones that I've seen a bit of a theme in there is somebody's kindly posted that they don't feel heard by their GP concerning, they're on long-term chemo and its side effects, and it makes the worrying worse for them. And how can I help my GP understand these concerns? And then there's another one on the same theme around, doctors not seeming to understand that treatments can make you feel very low and sick and don't feel that they can help you with this. And they seem to tell you to just manage with it. How can I deal with the feelings of being just another patient to my hematologist? And I'm mindful that I picked that one up first because if I could introduce Eileen, if you could introduce yourself to everybody, because you haven't had that opportunity. Perhaps this is a topic that you could also maybe answer some of those questions. And how can the care team, the clinical nurse specialists, what your thoughts are on those kind of feelings and struggles that people are having?
Yeah, thank you. So my name's Aileen. I work up in Sheffield at the Hallam Hospital, and I'm my role is a clinical nurse specialist supporting patients who've undergone stem cell transplant. My main focus is for people who've had the donor stem cell transplant. So that's my sort of role really in sort of the long-term care and support. But it's a real issue, isn't it, that? And I think, you come in the room and the computer's on and, the doctor's peering at the at all the numbers and great, you're doing fantastic, next cycle, crack on, you're doing great. And you sort of drag yourself back out. And it's a really big problem. And I think, that's just a very small element of how treatment's going, isn't it? In terms of the clinical picture. But the real thing is acknowledging how are you actually getting on with it? How are you really feeling with it? And those questions aren't normally really brought up in a clinic because times are so short. I think something that I try and do really is to really try and sort of acknowledge with patients how tough it must be and how are things what are your main worries at the moment? What are the really things that are really concerning you? And I think my advice, I think you write things down before you go and see your healthcare professional, right? See the doctor, and try and sort of get you can mention how hard things are actively rather than just sort of listening to what they're saying, and just sometimes even just getting that acknowledged is just what people need to hear, that it is having an effect. But I'm also a great believer in talking to each other, support groups. I don't know if you have them in your area, using the leukemia care buddy systems, using all the organisations out there. Anthony Nolan have got some great sort of services as well, of just when you come home, just reaching out and just saying how it really is for you, saying how you really feel and expressing that to someone who you feel able to. And you then don't keep it shoved inside and it's sort of bubbling away. I'm a great believer in someone to share it to, or whether you do have a health professional you can bring up later and talk. I don't know if I'm rambling on a bit, but I don't know if that's answering your question, but it's a really valid point, I think, that you've raised about how it really is for you and wanting to be able to share that with your healthcare team.
So yeah, thanks for that. So that's sort of two-ended to that, isn't it? Is trying to find a way where you can communicate with the care team so they understand your feeling of not well. Help address that, but connecting with others that maybe similar situation I have lived experience to help you in that. What about the psychological team? Have you any thoughts in this space, Mira and Laura?
I think it's really important to have trust in your own understanding of how you think and feel, that you're the people that know yourselves best. And if you are struggling, that it's important that that's taken seriously. So for example, if you are able to access a therapies team within your hospital network, that can be a really great start. And you can also self-refer to the NHS talking therapies, so you don't need to go via the GP. Sometimes it's about knowing who's the right support for you at different times. And we tend to have different people in our social networks that provide us different things. We might have a friend who makes us laugh, someone who cooks great food, another person who can just sit with our thoughts and feelings. Sometimes it's a little bit about figuring out who are the people who are going to help me most with what I need right now and accessing them in that way. I think it's really hard when you don't feel heard and listened to.
Thank you for that. There's another thing that's come up, and I'm picking that one up because I'm actually directly asking everybody's, fielding your questions from the audience, because I think that's most relevant. There's a theme around managing anxiety, as a particular emotion. And, somebody's kindly posted that their anxiety comes in a physical form by bad dreams and also physical pain, and trying to cope with that and manage that. And another person's, was quite understandably is overwhelmed with everything and anxious about everything, and can't seem to put time aside for family, work, and other normal life priorities. And so it's about how to adjust. So have you got any thoughts about managing anxiety and what to do when anxiety becomes such a big problem?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost is just to say that often the anxiety that we experience is a really understandable response to finding yourself in this threatening situation. That we all have a threat system within us, and when we meet threat, when our brain detects danger, it can trigger off what's commonly known as our fight or flight system. And part of that process is our minds are more likely to notice danger. We're more likely to think about the things that have happened in the past that have been dangerous. We might be more likely to interpret ambiguous things as dangerous or threatening. And again, this can usually be because we're in our threat system, we are in a period of danger. So the things that can help is anything that can help bring ourselves down. Sometimes that's time. Sometimes that's giving yourself that compassion that this is really hard and that the way you're responding is because of that situation, not because there's anything wrong. Other times it might be about finding some soothing that works for you. So using some soothing breaths, some sensory activities that help you feel comforted. Again, talking to people that help you understand your experience of anxiety. And perhaps using those tools that we mentioned. So being able to use the worry tree to distinguish which are the worries that I can do something about, which are the ones that it's more about living alongside. And if you do find yourself living alongside a lot of difficult worries, some of the strategies that can work and help alongside, giving yourself that break and compassion might be about being mindfully aware of the thoughts and feelings as they show up, allowing them to pass by, trying not to criticize or judge them too much, redirecting your attention to something that really truly matters to you. So I'm a big fan of distraction, when distraction means doing something that actually matters, doing something that you feel is important for you. And alternatively, you can speak to your GP about things like medications or again, more talking therapies. I'm sorry that we can't go into more detail of each individual person, but I guess the key message is if you are feeling overwhelmed or you are feeling easily triggered, that's probably because you're very hypervigilant at the moment. And actually the thing that's going to help is giving yourself that break to come back down, whether that's by doing something to bring it down or allowing yourself the time to come down. I think another important thing to remember is often we can forget that how we feel right now is not how it's always going to feel. But when it feels so strong, we can get so wrapped up in that, it's hard to see how it's going to be any different. So just reminding yourself that this can pass and that this can turn into something different, as hard as that might be in the moment, that can be really powerful in itself as well.
Thank you very much for that. I think that was really helpful. I don't know if this segues into another question, but one of the very first questions, and thank you from the person in the audience, this person's struggling to relax, constant fear of second cancers, and as could possibly be on long-term treatment, or could possibly be somebody that's had intensive treatment. So, you would guess from the person, maybe you can answer in the thread, that you're feeling well in your health, but are struggling with these uncertainties and being able to move forward with that constant fear there. Have you got it? Does that dovetail into any particular topics that maybe both?
I think that's really common, and I think that sorry, I didn't mean to jump in there, Nick.
No, I was actually going to direct it straight to you actually on that.
Yeah, and I you know,
Clinical
and
aspect
how
to it.
you know, life can change overnight with a cancer diagnosis, blood cancer, anything. Things can happen very quickly, and all of a sudden you're into this new world, aren't you, with things being done to you, and you're being told what to do and what to take and all of that sort of thing. And then you know, as treatment comes to its end, or you're in between treatments, you're then sort of in this alternative universe, aren't you, where the appointments get a bit less and you're just sort of left out there, really, in terms of how do I deal with this, how do I manage what's happened to me, how do I know something serious, how do I know what to do? And it's a really difficult one for people, and it's a very common worry for people. And I think, well, my advice is that it tends to be more of a concern in the first sort of year or so after treatment's finished, and then things can get a little bit easier. I would, hopefully everyone's got contact numbers to ring if they've got sort of concerns or worries. And as time goes by, that, then they can phone somebody in hospital and check things out. And I also think it's really important to share with family and friends how you're feeling, that yes, my treatment's finished now, I'm not physically taking this chemo anymore, but I still worry about it. I'm not suddenly okay now. I've still got a lot to adapt to, and I've still got lots of concerns about relapse or recurrence, and am I going to be okay? And I think if you share that with your family and friends, they might sort of have a little bit of a nod to themselves that you still need a little bit of support and help, I think. But that's natural to have some, concerns and anxieties and fears. That's fine. But I think if you feel as though that's becoming overwhelming, about it's taking over your constant worry about everything, looking at yourself and worrying about everything, you're not looking forward to things, it's consuming you in a way, then that is, I think, a trigger point to get some, to reach out and get some help and support with that, and bring those feelings into a more manageable state, through the things that sort of Mia and Lara suggested, or through your hospital, or through, the talking therapies. It can be a really good resource. So it's just recognizing it and just managing it, and if it becomes overwhelming, getting some help with that. I don't know if that's answered the question.
I think that's really helpful. And I mean, there's a similar question around worry about long-term side effects of future treatment. So, obviously that's fear of relapse and next treatment, and then the long-term effects, in becoming a shadow. The words the person has used quite rightly is shadow of their former self, and how do they manage that? So how do you balance these feelings over time? Have the psychology team got any thoughts about this? Because I think that is always going to be, there's that parrot on your shoulder feeling.
Yeah.
How could that, is there a way that can be practically managed?
It's really hard, and I think Eileen would probably agree. What the challenge is that we are actually actively asking people to stay a little bit anxious and look out for those uncertainties. We want them to tell us if we notice anything different. So we can't get rid of it completely, and nor do we want to. And that's an important thing to hold in mind, that this is not something, again, I feel like I'm the parrot now. I'm repeating the same thing. It's not that there's anything wrong with you, that often this is exactly what your brain is supposed to be doing to try and keep yourself safe. One of the things that we often talk about, kind of coming back to that stop technique, if you can pause and notice where your mind is going, take that breath, soften your shoulders, soften your jaw, and do that observation of, what is this worry telling me? And usually what it's telling you is something about what matters to you. If you are worried about the cancer returning, or you are worried about the effects of further treatment, that might not necessarily be something we have control over right now, but it is telling you something about who or what matters to you. And perhaps that's your sign to redirect your attention to those things. Again, not necessarily squashing that fear or that uncertainty, but being able to redirect that attention towards the things that really do matter and using that fear and worry to help you key into that, treating yourself with some kindness as you do so. I just noticed as well in the chat, someone mentioned about how CBT is not always been that helpful and what other alternatives. And just to highlight that there are a few alternatives. So the books that we recommend come from acceptance commitment therapy, which is often the therapy that we use most. The other therapy style that can be really helpful here is compassion focused therapy, which is about treating yourself with kindness and compassion and letting go of some shame. And lastly, some counseling. It can be really helpful for people. Sometimes it's not about having a therapy or a goal to change. Sometimes it's just having that space to talk and be heard and feel validated. So as Eileen said, if it is feeling like it's tipping over and becoming like it's affecting your day to day, and the strategies that we've spoken about today don't quite feel like they're cutting it, and you're not happy with CBT, there are those other alternatives as well.
Thank you so much. I'm mindful. Thank you, everybody, for these questions. There are a couple of themes in here that could be around confidence and loss of confidence and how to cope with that, and another that could also be segued into something else. So somebody's posted about now having a feeling of failure and worthlessness. Although everybody says they look great, it's still hard to deal with the reactions of other people who are often very dismissive. And how do you manage these reactions and express these concerns to friends and family? So there's a communication aspect in there as well. And I noticed earlier there was a comment from somebody that has lost their confidence in driving. Previously never had any problems before, but can't understand why now, that they're very nervous about being in the car. And then similarly, somebody who's anxious outdoors. Now, I don't know if that's related to other issues, and we can touch on another question there, but somebody that's also anxious now, doesn't feel safe when they're outside and is really eager to get back home. So I've kind of grouped those three questions together really for the psychology team. So to see if you can address those three.
Yeah. I mean, they are all very separate, but I guess the thing that's striking me most is kind of coming back to that idea that perhaps the reason these fears and anxieties are around is because your threat system has been triggered. And so that feeling of being in danger it hasn't quite simmered down yet. So maybe feeling a bit hypervigilant, maybe feeling like that your safe places have become smaller and smaller. So that might affect your person who discussed driving and feeling uncomfortable about being outside. Again, these are things that, although we're saying are understandable, it's not something that you have to live with. So it might be about seeking some further support, because they might be signs that perhaps your threat system has become a little bit too overwieldy here, and maybe you're going to need something extra to start dialing that back. Again, some of that will come with time and kindness. And Nick, can you remind me of the first thing that you mentioned before driving?
I can.
Was it losing confidence in yourself?
Yes.
I think that was it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, that might come for lots of different reasons. One of the things that we notice sometimes is that going through a leukemia or a cancer or cancer-related treatment, it can really rock your boat of your expectations of your world and expectations of yourself. Those sort of basic understandings that you had of how life will be. So that it takes away some of that certainty, which can affect some of that confidence in yourself. Not because there's anything that's changed about you, but because those very foundations on which you based the predictability of the world have been shaken. Again, that might also link with the people who feel anxious about other things. This can be really, really difficult. And what I've been really interested in is in the chat is how much people have shared about their own experiences and the things that have helped them. And maybe there are things that other people have noticed that have helped with their confidence or lowering their threat system. The things that we might suggest without knowing anyone specifically is starting slow, do the hardest things at easiest times. So very slowly and gradually build out your comfort zone again, doing that in ways that feel as safe as they can be, but pushing yourself a little bit more each time, showing yourself what you can manage and giving yourself compassion when there are times where that's harder. And that will look different for everyone depending what it is that you're working towards. But there might be some other really great suggestions from other people.
I think that was also linked into with that question was about feelings of failure and self-worth, inability to communicate to others, to share those feelings. I don't know if you did fully cover those in your talks, but that was part of those questions. I'm mindful we've got so many questions and we're really getting short of time. I think one thing that's come up a few times is any suggestions on how to manage and deal with fatigue and tiredness, as that's a common thread amongst many people as to how to cope with the limitations of that. Because I know you did cover a lot of that in your talk.
I think fatigue is it, and I ask about fatigue directly now. I ask the direct question in my late effects clinic, and it's a massive deal for people, and life-changing quite often, you know, and there isn't a magic answer. Unfortunately, we're still learning more about it. We need to get better at dealing with it. I think there's all the obvious things that you can do into, you know, we have to make sure all the hormone levels are right, vitamin levels are right, the physiological reasons for fatigue are covered. But I think other things are, you know, boxing and carving up your day, putting your day into boxes, and then sort of doing certain things at certain times, and then having the rest times, having brain rest as well, you know, for mental fatigue's a massive thing. But I've been collating information about fatigue. I've been trying to share, there's some good booklets around about managing fatigue. Leukaemia County and Ellen have got good books as well, and just really getting the conversation going out there. Macmillan have got some books, I think, just acknowledging it, mentioning it in your clinics, and looking at what information is out there.
Thanks, Eileen.
There's some fantastic stuff on the chat here. It's absolutely brilliant.
I think there's another aspect to that as well that maybe the psychologist could just mention too. It's the isolating experience that's been voiced about this as well. Whether there's some way is there a way that anybody can help with that process of managing that? It's not just managing the fatigue, I think, but it's also the isolating experience of the fatigue. So there's a psychological aspect of that, isn't there?
Yeah, and that's really, thank you for raising that, Nick. It's really important. So I guess the peer support can be really helpful for a start, just to be able to meet with other people who may be going through something similar. As Eileen said, there's lots of practical strategies, kind of pacing and boxing up your day and thinking about your priorities. And part of that is about knowing what feels important and breaking those down into smaller steps. So if it is about connecting with other people or finding ways of coming out of isolation, maybe setting yourself a small manageable goal that you could do in the next couple of days, and then halve it. I always say halve it, no matter what the goal is, and aim for that. Taking things nice and slow and gently with the goal of meeting an important value, which might be about connection. I think as well, the different services will be available in different localities, but for example, here at Bristol Haematology and Oncology Centre, we have a team of physiotherapy and occupational therapists who specialise in fatigue management. And also we currently have access to a research project using a self-help app, but that might be limited to just our area. Find out a little bit more about that and let you know, Nick, so you can disseminate that across. But yeah, maybe if it is about the isolation, choosing your goal so that you can work towards connecting with other people.
And I think I'm a great believer in sharing with others, and I think this has been a theme throughout all of the sort of experiences that people have talked about, you know, and it's not feeling alone. And if you just sort of reach out, whether it's in your hospital, whether there's a support group, whether there's the national charities, Leukaemia Care are fantastic, you know, and talking to someone about how you're feeling, and then you will find out you're not alone, and this isn't just you, and it's not you not dealing with things, and that can help with the isolation aspect and not keeping it into yourself. is really important. But yeah, easier said than done, I know.
Sometimes it is just putting one foot in front of the other, isn't it? And it might not feel like massive changes at the time, but before you know it, you'll look back and you'll see how far you've already come. And it's those small steps that really add up. You've probably already made a huge amount of distance.
And family and friends that find it hard, I think they think the treatment's finished and you're okay now. They don't understand how life is, and that can be hard getting that message through. Yeah. There is lots of stuff out there.
I'm going to steal a couple of minutes of everybody's time if they've got a moment, as there was a bit of time that could probably be chopped off of the video at the front. There's another isolation question in there about somebody struggling still wearing a mask because of lack of immunity. Whereas everybody's gone back to normal, they're expected to go to normal, but they can't get back to a sense of normality because it's physically not practical. So I guess that's an isolating experience as well. I'm just going to touch on that. I think from that point of view, a recommendation really would be to connect with others living in similar situations, which you can do remotely. But I was just wondering if anybody's got any comments from the psychological team, because that really is a current issue. Many in this audience will have been immune compromised, who might be living on continuous therapies. They've been isolated from their support networks. They've been isolated from general healthcare, routine opticians, things of that nature. They're not able to take part, and this has happened over a long period of time. And even going outdoors without a mask can be a fear at certain times of the year. I just wonder if you've got any thoughts how to deal with the long-term isolating experiences that are physically isolating as well as mentally isolating.
Yeah, I think it's really important to acknowledge that, and particularly the post-COVID era, that this is really hard. It's a really difficult aspect of it, and it can be an aspect of it that not many people understand that well. So firstly, holding that compassion for yourself. And some really lovely comments in the chat actually about how some people have overcome some of that isolation by taking small steps. And I think coming back to what we mentioned about values, which I realized I didn't talk enough about, this sort of compass direction. There was a picture of a compass when we were talking about knowing your why, and we use that because sometimes if we switch our focus from destination to compass direction, it can help us connect with the thing that matters to us beneath the activity we used to do. So the reason we use compass is because you can always go east, but you can never tick it off the list. You can never say you've achieved it, but if you get blown off course or there's an obstacle, you can find other ways of going east. So in reality, how this is going to look for different people is going to be very different. But if you can connect with what is it that I'm missing? What is it that mattered to me? When did I last feel like myself? And what was I doing then? What was it that mattered to me about that? It can help you find other ways of perhaps achieving those things. Adapting that to what does feel manageable for you. But again, like as we said, acknowledging that this is a loss, this is a change, finding people that understand, giving yourself the time to recover and treating yourself kindly while you are recovering. These can be really, really important. And if you are stuck for ideas, just having a quick look in the chat, because there are some really lovely ideas. And if you do have any ideas of things that have helped you or the small steps that have made a difference for you, if you wanted to share them today, I feel like it would be really helpful.
Thank you so much. I'm going to finish on one question. And it's probably the last question we got in, and could be related to the one that you were just talking to as well, about moving forwards in terms of how can you accept the new you. This person would like to enjoy their pastimes again, which many can, and some may not be able to, for example, fully, as we just said, people that are isolated because they're immune compromised. But how can you work towards looking forward to your future events? The cinema, the gym again. Doctors don't cover this during appointments, and this person and many in the audience, myself included, as immune compromised, would like to enjoy these things again. So if you've got any advice final advice to help people with making adjustments and moving forward and being able to enjoy what they used to enjoy before their diagnosis and entering the treatment process.
That's a really big one, and I guess there
I
are
know,
two.
but it was a positive one. I thought if you could offer some positive guidance for people to take forward. I've stolen a few more minutes. It's hard to keep to time. I apologise to everybody because so much sharing, and there's so many issues everybody's experiencing.
I guess there was two parts to that question. One part of that was about how do I move towards acceptance of this new normal, and how do I adjust so that I can achieve some of the things that I've used to do before. And I think we've probably covered some of that adjustment stuff in the slides and in the
Yes, I
Q&A
was going
so
to say,
far.
yeah.
And so you kind of, that's sort of, how do I look forward to that? It might be about making adjustments, but the harder thing is, how do I accept where I am? And I think it's really important to look at what do we mean by the word acceptance. Often it feels like acceptance should be meaning happy or at peace or okay with where we are. But in reality, what we're often talking about is just letting go of the struggle with it, letting go of fighting against it when that fighting's not helping us develop anymore. So it's really hard to come to that place, and that might always come with some dissatisfaction or sadness, loss, anger, guilt, and sometimes it's about acknowledging all of that. If you have a chance, there's a really great video called Tug of War of a Monster by Act Auntie, who did the cartoon that we had in the slides earlier. And there's also another video called The Unwelcome Party Guest. Both of these are available on YouTube. They're really good metaphors to help explore that concept of fighting with a present that we can't change, and actually moving towards a place of allowing it to be there in spite of the challenges that it comes with. Again, that's really hard, but focusing on what does matter to you, switching your attention to the things that bring you joy, that bring you connection. And when those difficult thoughts and feelings do come up, trying to observe them mindfully as much as possible, recognizing why your mind is doing that. It's not trying to trip you up, but allowing it to pass through. And these are not easy skills. They're not necessarily something that's easy to learn on your own. So, for example, using apps like Headspace can be really helpful, or connecting with a therapist that you feel you can trust and understands you, or those peer networks as well.
Thank you. I think everybody has really kept you busy, and it's been fantastic that everybody's been so willing to share. And I think just listening to everybody, as well as the answers, has really been quite empowering. And I guess the peer support you were ending on, key messaging there is connect with others that do understand and use routes to do that are available to you. So I'd like to thank everybody for attending, and I'd like to thank our panel, and I'll say a final thank you at the end, but I've just got a few slides just to run through that we did share at the beginning, just to direct you to other potential services and support that can help connect you with others, and what support's available to you from Leukemia Care. I don't know if my colleague Elle, if you're able to pop those slides up, and I'll quickly run through those. Okay, the quick slide here. I don't know if everybody can see the slides. I can now. Just a quick summary of services from Leukemia Care. So obviously, webinars ongoing, something like this of this nature. The regular newsletters and the magazine. If you connect on the website, you can subscribe to our quarterly magazine, which can be a very informative way of actually listening and learning from the experiences of others. Podcast is a service we offer. Social media, we're always very active on there. We're sharing other patients' experiences. The website is a plethora of information, and that will connect you to all of our support. I think from an information booklet that I'd recommend from Leukemia Care is we've got a number of booklets across all cancers, all leukemia types, MPNs and MDS. But in relation to this topic, we have a specific book about next stage recovery and adjustment. I'd recommend you visit the website, and you can download that as a PDF. If you wanted a hard copy, have that sent to you. I touched on Leukemia Matters, support services. The helpline is available either in person, one-to-one talk over the phone, or there's a WhatsApp service if you want anonymity. Don't feel alone. If you're struggling, if you want to talk to somebody, reach out. That's what our helpline team are there for. We do have a network of virtual support groups. That's a way to connect with others where you can meet with, you know, as was touched on, meet with people who are living with the same condition or the same challenges, or do understand. And that really is, for many people, a bit of a eureka moment if you haven't connected with other people, so that you can actually live together with shared experiences. We do have offer a welfare advice advocacy service. So if you're struggling with financial matters and issues in that direction, please do get in touch. You can do that through the website, or you can do that by the helpline. Similarly, with advocacy and support, our advocacy officer will provide you, you know, if you have issues, we'll help you with connecting with the right healthcare professionals, or addressing issues that you might be able to speak to, signpost you and connect you to the right people. And again, more peer-to-peer support. We have our online forums, Facebook groups, and somebody already mentioned the buddy scheme. You know, we have a national buddy scheme where we bring together people who might be living with the same diagnosis, treatments, and experiences. That's a terrific way of actually being able to work through things together with somebody that is also doing the same. The counselling fund, we do offer 6 sessions of counselling. That was mentioned earlier as a very useful resource. I'm a patient myself. When I was going through and recovering from treatment, that was probably one of the things that helped me most, apart from connecting with other peers. So, you know, if you want access to that, you can access that through the website or through the helpline. I've mentioned the buddy scheme. Again, similar mention there, the Anne Ashley Counselling Fund, a little bit more information there about that. But again, you can get to that through the website. Keep up to date with us on social media. As I said, pretty active. And one of our main threads is always sharing experiences, everybody coming together and sharing their experiences, raising awareness. And that's when you do feel you're not alone. It gives you the opportunity to relate to the experience of others. And I think we could finish on just our contact details. Yeah, I've got to mention fundraising as we whiz through that. Everybody's struggling at the moment in these financial times. You know, any little way that and it could actually be a positive, you know, community fundraising, getting together with other people can bring people together in the community living with similar challenges. And it's a way that you can also feed back into the system to help others, but benefit yourselves, both from the altruistic aspect that you're helping people, but more importantly, connecting with other people that do understand, or people that don't understand, which helps people that don't understand, you know, with family members that you might be struggling with if you were to do fundraising initiative together, things of that. And that's not me trying to squeeze money out of everybody. So that was just a suggestion on that. And I think if we just end on our contact details, if you haven't got them, if you haven't visited one of us before, please, you know, just you can get in touch with us either via the phone or directly through the website. And I think I'd like to end there and just thank you all for attending. I mean, what a wonderful crowd. We've been very busy. You've kept us busy with questions. Everybody has shared so much information. And I think we'll chat with the team afterwards. If there's any unanswered questions that we haven't addressed, that maybe we could feed them through to you. If you would be able to sort of generically answer some of those questions, we can maybe feed those back into the system somehow. The video will be available within a week or so. It'll be available on the website, and quite often we'll be sending feedback forms out, and the link to that video often goes with the feedback form, so you can revisit everything here. But really, I can talk forever. You've done all the talking. Thank you so much. You've been fabulous, and fabulous engagement. And thank you, everybody, for joining us and sharing. So all that's left to say is goodbye and thank you again. Have a good rest of the afternoon.